much, Mrs. Del Castillo. Thank you very much for the kind invitation. I'll try to very briefly give an overview of the Commission's Directorate-General in charge of Digital Affairs, so DG CNECT's international outreach as regards our digital single market strategy. But first, I think it's useful to briefly say a little bit about the context. And you, Mrs. Del Castillo, already said the most essential point is that, one, we are in a digital revolution. It's really a very, very profound transformation. I think everybody around the table is, of course, convinced of that, but it's important to just recall it as background. This is no longer, not like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, just about the ICT sector. It's a very profound transformation of all economic sectors, including the most traditional ones, and also, of course, of our society. So it means that there are a lot of policy challenges, policy issues, to make sure that this transformation, we turn it into an opportunity in the European Union. But secondly, as you said, it's a global phenomenon. So that means that everybody ultimately is confronted, everybody around the world is confronted with the same type of policy issues. And so first, two sort of preliminary conclusions with regard to that context is that it's ultimately in the European Union, given the profoundness of the transformation, the fact that it affects all sectors, including the traditional ones, or the more traditional ones, it's ultimately also about our competitiveness. So in the European Union, our reaction, as you know, has been to make sure that the biggest asset which we have in the European Union, namely our single market, an integrated single market of more than 500 million consumers, more than 20 million companies, because of course the business-to-business elements are very important, that single market operates also perfectly within the digital world, within this digital area. And that was not the case, as you just gave a good example of where member states introduced also individual measures which, like notably on geolocalization of non-personal data, with the result that you had new barriers appearing within the European Union, and the single market wasn't working optimally. So in 2015, we launched a digital single market strategy. Important here is, again, as you all know, but I have to recall it, that it's a very comprehensive agenda. So it covers both our regulatory policy, whether it's in the electronic commerce area, electronic communications area, audiovisual, copyright. But it also covers our support to infrastructure deployment, R&D, standardization, skills, startups, scale-ups. Just to be, in that sense, I have to say, it is also, if one compares maybe to the strategies of our main trading partners, I would say that that element of comprehensiveness is quite unique in the European Union. As said, the rest of the world is confronted with the same type of policy issues. As we in the European Union are, as again, most of our main trading partners, conducting policy on an evidence-based policy making. It also means that we are, as you know, we do a lot with preliminary studies, all that material, we do stakeholder consultations, all of that material being public. We also notice that a lot of that material is being used by our partners across the world. It's being studied by them. So in that sense, as you said, a very important element is already there, that it's about, we're in the process of working together with third countries, exchanging information, learning from each other. But I have to say that given the comprehensiveness of our agenda in the digital single market strategy, we have to stay modest here, but it is true that a lot of third countries with whom we're working are very closely looking at what we are doing. And we've seen an increase over the last year and a half, 2 years, since we did the midterm review of the digital single market strategy with a very clear international aspect also. It's, we've had since then a sort of I would say a demultiplication of requests from third countries to enter into dialogues, into various forms of cooperation. We've responded very clearly and very positively to that. with those countries with whom we had long-standing dialogues, forms of cooperation. We've looked at ways of making them much more regular, more operational. Some around the table here are very familiar with what that means. We conduct a lot of very, I would say, hands-on discussions with countries such as Japan, where we have regular workshops. So we go into a lot of detail. We really learn from each other. We look at how we jointly can work together also in the area of research and development with cooperation, joint programming. I guess we'll hear a bit more about that. We also have regional cooperation. We've increased recently, we've taken a new initiative to talk about digital affairs with Latin America. And that was certainly an initiative which in the next few years is going to take us further in that relation. Again, looking at concretely the areas where we can cooperate, cybersecurity, standardization, to name but a few, but probably also e-commerce. And how in doing that we can also assist Latin America in its strives for more regional cooperation or regional integration. We're also looking in the regional sphere also to the South Mediterranean, the Western Balkans, where some initiatives were taken recently, as you will have seen. And then, of course, the multilateral sphere, G7, G20, are very important since about 3 years now. The G20 has a specific digital economy task force where a lot of these issues are being discussed. We're looking at ways of addressing in that area also artificial intelligence. Again, with the upcoming Japanese presidency, we might hear some more about that. And then we have topical cooperation, standardization being a good example, where we have a project with financial support from our colleagues in the Commission in charge of the FPI, and which is focused all around cooperation on standardization in key areas with six important trading partners. We have cooperation on development aid, digital for development, which is also very, very important. And we have specific cybersecurity dialogues. I mean, this is just to give a short overview of the multitude of activities which we have in the international sphere. I mean, the objective, of course, is for us is a way through these discussions, as we said, to exchange best practice, to learn from each other, but of course also a way to promote our values. And it's also a way to facilitate concrete cooperation in all of the areas, the policy areas which I mentioned, making sure that they're interlinked within a comprehensive agenda, so not individually, but we consider it's also strategically in our interest to combine discussions around all digital matters and not sort of segment them topically. Of course, ultimately, it is also about improving market access where there are in those areas of the world where there could be market access issues which occur. And ultimately for us, of course, it is all about making sure that we have better regulatory cooperation, but also the hope ultimately that would be more forms of regulatory convergence between the EU and third countries. I mean, finally, looking ahead, let's also keep the budget and the MFF in mind. I mean, I'm sure through the discussion which we'll have later on, this will come up. I mean, some of our main trading partners are investing very massively in artificial intelligence, in high-performance computing, which are essential elements for the success of the digital transformation for the digital economy. In the European Union, with the MFF, we've also put on the table proposals to keep pace with them and fill the investment gap in areas such as, in particular, artificial intelligence and HPC. So that will be, of course, also an important element to bear in mind in the upcoming discussions, that, of course, the European Union is situated in a global context, and that to be successful in this digital transformation, we need to keep pace also in terms of investments with the rest of the world. Thank you very much.